Hello lovely people, welcome to another video, and this is something I've not done for a long time, a movies ranking video, and this is one I've wanted to do for the longest time about possibly the most prolific movie maker of them all, Sir Alfred Hitchcock. I'm going to be looking at all 53 films that he released and trying the arduous job of trying to rank them from 53 down to 1. This has to be the most impressive run for a director of all time, running from 1922 to 1976. From black and white to colour, silent to sound, Hitchcock helped to influence, inform, change and challenge cinema over 50 years and created some truly iconic films in the process. It's going to be a really difficult job to do, but I've not seen many videos like this, and it's something that I enjoy watching, so I hope you do too. I'm going to try, I've got some notes, but I'm not going to script it too heavily. So I will make mistakes. I will get dates and facts and figures completely wrong. And no doubt I will choose films that you feel should be ranked a lot higher. Some films that you feel should be ranked a lot lower. But then I kind of feel like that's one of the great things about these kind of videos. I really enjoy seeing your comments, especially for films that I rank quite low, when you give me the case for the defense on why you love that movie, and it often makes me want to reappraise that film or that piece of music or whatever it is that you're talking about, and go back and reappraise or rewatch it. So a lot of these films are my first watch, and as such, some will be ranked lower than probably they should be. There'll be other films that I have forgotten and not seen for a long time, so they may well be ranked a bit lower than they should be. And there might be some that have recency bias, where I've watched them recently, and as such they'll be ranked a little bit higher because I've loved them on that first watch. So as you can tell, I'm not particularly slick. I watch a lot of these kind of things and think, oh, how do these people do it without pausing, without ers and ums, etc. There will be lots of that, I can grant you now. But I hope you have a glass of something medicinal, that you've got half an hour to put your feet up and just enjoy a celebration of a great man's legacy as we start to rank the 53 films of Alfred Hitchcock. There are a couple of films that actually can't be ranked, can you believe? There are a couple of lost movies from Hitchcock's collection. The very first film that he made in 1922, which is called Number 13, and it ran out of funding halfway through, so it wasn't released. I can't imagine later Alfred Hitchcock films that happening too, but as a very young director, the first film he got to work on, Number 13, was not released. His third film, which was released, however has been lost to the annals of time, is The Mountain Eagle from 1926, which is also a lost film from the archive that can't be watched now, but as you can imagine is one of the films that people, film historians, want to track down more than any other. So for these last few films on the ranking list, I'll probably won't spend very much time talking about them, because I don't like to be negative on this channel. I like to try and be positive. I like to share things that I love, and Alfred Hitchcock is one of my all-time favourite directors, so I don't want to dwell too much on things that I didn't like, but there have to be some films that come in last, and here they are. At number 53 we have, right at the bottom for me, is Juno and the Paycock from 1930. It's set in the Irish Civil War, and it's about a family who earns a huge inheritance and forgets their most important values along the way. This is a strange one. It's more of a play that is filmed rather than using any kind of interesting camera trickery that Hitchcock became known for later on. And as such, it's quite tedious. Also, I really don't like the Irish stereotypes that are presented here. It's all a bit lazy, the stereotypes in it. So I found this one quite difficult to get through. I think the only bit that I liked was seeing a nice cameo from young Private Fraser from Dad's Army of We're Doomed, Captain Mannering, talking about lazy stereotypes. Yeah, he appears here as an Irishman, which is a little bit different. I think he's in one more film as well. I can't remember which one it is, but yeah, it's nice to see him in this. But yeah, this is definitely a skippable one. In at number 52, we have from 1931, The Skin Game. This is about two rich families. One is old money, as they say, and one is nouveau riche. And the nouveau riche character is a landlord who's a particularly nasty piece of work who cons people out of their land. Yeah, the characters are really unlikable in this one, and it really does have few redeeming qualities. So let's move on, shall we? 51, we have The Farmer's Wife from 1928. This is about a middle-aged widower who decides to remarry and considers different suitable wives. Yeah, it's a comedy, but not particularly funny. I found the farmer himself, the main character, quite creepy. I didn't like the way he treated women in it, and it's got quite a nice ending to it, but apart from that, again, I would skip this one. At number 50, we have Waltzes from Vienna from 1928, one of a few of Hitchcock's period pieces. And it's about Johann Strauss Jr., forced by his father to forget music and work in a bakery where he falls in love with a young woman called Resi. Yeah, it's beautiful to look at, but is totally forgettable. I couldn't tell you any more than that about this one. And now we're into the 40s, and at number 49 we have Hitchcock's first ever film, or first ever released film, from 1925, The Pleasure Garden. And the plot for this one is basically a story of a music hall dancer's rise to stardom. Has a fantastic Roaring Twenties feel to it, which is lovely to see. Yeah, it's more of a curiosity, this one, for completionists. I wouldn't say, apart from a few nice dance scenes from the 20s, it's not one that I would recommend. Young and Innocent at 48 from 1937 is about a woman who's found and murdered, and the prime suspect escapes from the courthouse with the help of the daughter of the chief of police. This is the first on the list of a trend that you'll see running through this list, which I didn't realise until I watched so many Hitchcock films. The theme of the wrong man, or the wrongly implicated main character. Yeah, there's some nice chemistry here from the lead roles. This is something, though, that I think this theme is something that Hitchcock will improve upon on later films, definitely. Another thing that's quite cringeworthy at the end is that they use blackface as a major plot point. The real murderer hides himself in a black and white minstrel band, and they only discover him when he has like a facial twitch that they know him for, and wipe off the blackface and realise it's him. But yeah, through a modern lens, it's a bit uncomfortable to watch that. At 47, we have The Manxman, a silent film from 1927. I can't remember the name of the actor, but he's very interesting to watch. He's also in The Ring, which is coming later on in this list. It's about a love triangle. Basically, a man is feared lost at sea, and whilst they think he's passed, his wife falls in love with his best friend, only for him to return, and obviously the awkwardness that causes. It's a very melodramatic drama, but yeah, very watchable, and I did like the three main characters in this one. At 46, we have the final film that Hitchcock ever directed, Family Plot from 1976. Now, this is one of those, I think there's three films, I think it's the next three, in fact, that I haven't seen for a long time. I've only probably seen once or twice, didn't really care for, but maybe I need to reappraise and rewatch. So apologies if these are films that you would score a lot higher. But Family Plot is about a phony psychic and her cab driver boyfriend who encounter a pair of serial kidnappers whilst trailing a missing heir. Yeah, and this one, I mean, it had the dark comedy, which is a bit Hitchcock, but it felt more like a Woody Allen film to me. It was more of a kind of screwball-y, you know, heavy on the words kind of plot. It didn't feel like a Hitchcock to me and didn't quite work. I found the characters super annoying on this one, but maybe I need to rewatch because I have heard people say that they really like this one, so who am I to judge? 45 is another one that I really disliked on first watch. So, but I know that a lot of people say that it's not a bad film. Finishing off the 60s from 1969, it's Topaz. A French intelligence agent becomes embroiled in the Cold War politics and uncovers many of the events that follow. Yeah, I found this one utterly forgettable and a bit of a tedious political thriller, this one. Yeah, I've completely forgotten it, to be honest. I do apologise. I need to reappraise and rewatch this one. Number 44, again, is one that I'm sure will score higher once I reappraise and rewatch it. It's Torn Curtain from 1966. An American scientist publicly defects to East Germany as part of a cloak and dagger mission to steal a formula before planning an escape back to the West. The one that rises this one above Topaz is the wonderful Paul Newman and Julie Andrews. Both great actors in this, and both do a great job. It's great to see particularly Julie Andrews in more of a serious kind of adult role, dramatic role, and they're both great in this. It's a gorgeous looking film, but it lacks any real excitement for me. It's one that I always fall asleep in the middle. It doesn't have much intrigue for me, and yeah, that's Topaz. Maybe I need to rewatch that one. In number 43, we're back to the silent films, and we have Downhill from 1927. This is one of two films that the iconic Ivor Novello was in, but I much prefer the other film he was in, which is coming later on. And this is about a schoolboy who takes the rap basically for his best friend's misdemeanor in a public school. Yeah, Ivor Novello, always mesmerising, so I enjoyed watching him, but the plot to me was fairly uninteresting and a bit of a slog, this one. Under Capricorn is next, from 1949, and it's number 42 on my list. A young gentleman goes to Australia where he reunites with his now married childhood sweetheart, only to find out she's become an alcoholic and harbours dark secrets. Yeah, this is one of only a few purely period piece dramas, along with the Waltzes from Vienna that I was talking about before. Joseph Cotten is in this one, as is Ingrid Bergman. Both of them will be in much better Hitchcock films down the line, with Joseph Cotten in Shadow of a Doubt, Ingrid Bergman in a few different ones actually. Yeah, they're both wonderful in this, but it just didn't grip me or have the same magic as other Hitchcock films around that time. I found it a bit plodding, a bit tedious, and a bit laborious to sit through, which is a real waste of a fantastic cast. Back to the silent movies again with Champagne at number 41 from 1928. It's about a spoiled heiress who runs away to marry her lover and her millionaire father, who tries to teach her a lesson by pretending to go bankrupt to see how she copes. Yeah, it's not one of Hitchcock's better films. It's more significant for its inventive visuals, this one. It has a great shot, which is where I think he created like a giant champagne glass that the shot was put through, making it look like she's watching as she's taking from the champagne glass. Really inventive stuff for the time. For 1928, that's amazing. He did a similar thing in Spellbound, where he created like a giant hand, I think, with a giant gun. So that's worth watching as well. Really, really clever stuff. Yeah, there's some nice set pieces in Champagne, but the way it labours its point does become fairly tiresome after a while. Yeah, the main character herself is utterly spoiled and unlikable in it. But yeah, I do like some of the inventive shots, which makes this raise slightly above some of the other ones on this list. And Rich and Strange at number 40 from 1931. This is about a bored couple who are given a huge inheritance and decide to go off on a cruise together and fall in love with new partners before deciding, well, I won't ruin it for you, but yeah, that's what happens. Joan Barry is in this. She has great screen presence, very captivating, and feels quite modern, I feel, her performance in this. But this farce, again, lacks the kind of characters that you want to root for. At number 39 from 1936, we have Secret Agent. It's all about a British soldier and novelist who returns home during World War I to find out that a government agency has faked a report of his death. Yeah, it's a nice spy movie, this one. It's always a pleasure to see Peter Lorre, who's in this one. I think this is one of 2 performances he has in a Hitchcock film. Really not as good as the other one, which will come later down the line. But yeah, he's great in this. Although he has like a Mexican accent and has like quite a dark makeup put on, so it's slightly yeah. But it's nice to see him anyway, and he does do a good job. And the rest of them are all great as well. It's a nice. I'm going to say this theme a lot, but it's a nice rainy day. Alfred Hitchcock, not one that's going to blow you away, but one that's very watchable and likeable nonetheless. Still not up there with like other spy thrillers like 39 Steps though. In at number 38 we have number 17 from 1932, and this is where the films start to get pretty good, I think. It's about a detective that finds a dead body in a townhouse, and several suspicious characters keep turning up, which deepens the mystery. Although Hitch had made like films for 10 years at this point, I always think like number 17 feels a bit like a student movie. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. It's kind of got quite a lot of German expressionist tropes in it. And it looks like he's trying them out for the first time. I know this isn't the first time he's tried them out. He's already done The Lodger and things like that, but it's kind of on the nose a little bit, which makes it look like he's trying these out for the first time. But he does a great job with them, and there's loads of great use of light and shadow, and it's an interesting film, interesting experiments influenced by people like Fritz Lang, of course. There's a comedy cockney comedy relief on it that I find quite irritating. And the rest of the acting is quite wooden in this one, so it doesn't stand up that well. And you can also tell that the sound is in its infancy as well. This is one of his first sound films, because there's parts where the sound is really echoey when they're in the big stairwells and things like that. So you can tell he's not quite worked out how to use sound. Although I did watch quite a bad print of this, so maybe that'll improve. My thoughts on it will improve if I watch a few more times. But yeah, worth a watch, but not one of his best. At 37 we have Foreign Correspondent from 1940. I sometimes get this one mixed up with Secret Agent. It's got a similar kind of vibe to it. It's about a wartime movie of American reporter finding out spy secrets. Yeah, it's got some nice suspense in this one, nice romance, and a fairly enjoyable story. At number 36, we have The Ring from 1927. As I was saying before, this has that same actor whose name escapes me from The Manxman. Has a very arresting screen presence. And it's about 2 boxers competing for the heart of the same woman, and has quite a lot of forward, ahead of their time shots where of the boxing match, which you can tell had a huge influence on films like Rocky and Raging Bull. Really well done, point of view shots and things like that. So it's worth watching for that. But the story itself, it's okay, but it's not anything to write home about. Mr. and Mrs. Smith is at 35 from 1941, an all-out comedy, this one, about an arguing couple discovering their marriage isn't legally binding, so decide to test each other's loyalty by experimenting with their single life. Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I love Alfred Hitchcock's sense of humour, his dark, macabre sense of humour that comes up in mysteries and suspense and things like that. But I'm not a fan of when he does it just outright comedy so much. There's not many of his films that are just comedies that I enjoy, and this is one that I didn't really enjoy. The chemistry's great between the two leads, but I do feel like this would have been better directed by people who do this kind of film, you know, more often, like your Billy Wilders, etc. Like Young and Innocent, I struggle to like the characters in this, and they get more irritating as the film progresses. There are some fun scenes and fun dialogue, but considering this is the same sort of time as Rope, Suspicion and Rebecca are from, hello, I'd call this much more of a miss. What do you think? The Trouble with Harry, talking of out and out comedies, is next at 1955. A dead body is discovered in the woods, but no one quite knows what to do about it. Yeah, very odd addition to Hitchcock's canon, this one, especially at the time of the mid-50s, his sort of classic era. Dark comedy that isn't particularly funny or scary. The only thing particularly creepy about it is the sort of blasé way that people have towards the dead body. But visually is where this one climbs a little bit higher for me. I love it's a real kind of love letter to the autumn, and I love the autumnal colours and scenery here. It's a gorgeous looking film. I also really like Shirley MacLaine in this. I love her in everything she does, but this is, I think, her first role. She was only about 18 in this, and she does a great job. And it's not a badly made film. It's just a bit too screwball comedy for my liking. I pretend to like Hitch when he's doing more suspenseful stuff rather than kind of wacky stuff. So yeah, it didn't do it for me as much for that reason. Now the next one's a bit of a funny one. And it ranks at both 33 and 32, and I'll tell you why. It will make sense as I go on, but this is two films, one called Murder and one called Mary, both of them from 1931, both of them essentially the same film. It's the only time that I know of where Hitchcock actually made a film both in English and in German with different casts on the same set at the same time. So the way I think it was made was that he would do a scene with the English cast on a set, and then replace them with the German cast, and they would do the same scene, and he would carry on like that. It's really strange to think of him doing this. It's not a bad script either. It's when a circus performer is found dead, and another member of the group is found next to the body with a loss of memory. So it's another one of those kind of mystery of whodunit kind of things. It is quite suspenseful. It's quite mysterious. Great shots in the circus, which I liked, enjoyed. But yeah, how to rate them really? I suppose I rate Murder, which is the English version, slightly higher than Mary, which is the German version, simply because I understood it more. So I'm sure if I was German, they'd be flipped over. But yeah, interesting experiment to see how he makes the same film twice, and it's really weird watching the two of them together, as you can imagine. At number 31, we have from 1939 the first of the three du Maurier adaptations that Hitchcock did, Jamaica Inn. It's about a gang of pirates who purposely cause shipwrecks to steal the treasure on board. And it turns out, spoiler alert, that one of the government officials is kind of in charge of the whole plot as well. So that's quite intriguing. It's quite a swashbuckling kind of tale. Not bad for a rainy day, again, there's that term. But after Rebecca, I was kind of expecting a bit more than this. You'll hear about Rebecca later on if you haven't seen it, but that's easily the best of the three du Maurier adaptations that Hitchcock did, and this one doesn't stand up to that at all. However, it does have Charles Lawton in it, who's always great. He's wonderfully camp and over the top as the villain of the piece in this. But the plot itself is fairly underwhelming, and yeah, it's worth a watch, but it's nothing exciting to write home about, this one. Into the 30s, and we have the Paradine case. Paradine? Let's call the whole thing off. The Paradine case from 1947. This is about a defense lawyer played by Gregory Peck, who becomes obsessed with his mysterious defendant. It's interesting to see Gregory Peck in more of a morally ambivalent role here. This is something that Hitchcock does really well, actually, is taking an actor that we think we know because of parts they played in the past, the sort of everyman or the nice guy or whatever, the hero, and twisting our expectations of him. He does this really well in films like Vertigo with Jimmy Stewart, and he also does it really well here as well with Gregory Peck, who I always think is a real sort of moral compass kind of hero from his fantastic performance in To Kill a Mockingbird. This isn't as great as To Kill a Mockingbird or anywhere near it, but it is still interesting to see him play such a morally shiftable character as he becomes more and more obsessed with Alida Valli, I think is her name. She's very arresting on screen. She's very spellbinding, which obviously helps that drama. It is a compelling court drama and character piece worth watching. Yeah, Gregory Peck is always brilliant, and check out Paradine Case if you get a chance. Number 29, we have I Confess from 1953. Great idea for a plot, this one. A murderer confesses his crime to a priest who can't share the confession because of his oath of confidentiality, even when he himself becomes implicated. Yeah, this is the first time I've seen Montgomery Clift in a lead role, and I know that they really came to blows, him and Hitchcock, because he was from that new school of acting, the sort of method acting, where he would say things, Hitchcock would say things to him like, your character is walking down this lane, and he would say something like, well, what's his motivation? And Hitchcock would say something like, I'm paying you. You know, he didn't get that whole thing of method acting at all, and you can understand why they just didn't get on very well. But it's a good film nonetheless. I did think Montgomery Clift was quite blank in this. He's got like a strangely blank face. I've not seen him in anything else, so maybe I'm being a bit harsh here, but he reminded me a bit of a Thunderbird. One of the Tracy brothers. He has this really wooden blank face which didn't really work for me, which is a shame because it's a great idea for a plot. I think it's one of the most interesting plot ideas of a Hitchcock film, but yeah, rather let down I think by Montgomery Clift, but still some great scenes, some great shots. At number 28 we have Easy Virtue from 1927. So the plot here is, after divorcing her abusive husband, a woman has an affair with a painter, then marries a sweet young man who knows nothing of her past. I really enjoyed this silent film. It's one of my favourite of his silent films. You really sympathise with the persecution of the woman who divorces her alcoholic husband and is then persecuted by her next in-laws when they find out. It's played with real emotion by actress Isabelle Jeans or Jones. She does a great job in this and really makes you sympathise with the character. So yeah, I'd say that's a silent film that you should watch if you get a chance. No doubt it's free on YouTube as well, like many of the silent films are as well. Blackmail is the first talkie from Hitchcock. It's at my number 27 from 1929. And it's about a woman who is blackmailed after she kills a man in self-defense. This is quite an interesting one as well. It was released both as a talkie and as a silent film. I watched the talkie version. I've not seen the silent version, but obviously it's at that time where the two things are starting to, you know, they're experimenting with sound, and yeah, so it's an interesting kind of checkpoint in Hitch's early career and historic in general. Really, it is one of the first talkies, this one. The melodramatic style of acting, as you can imagine, kind of bleeds over from the silent film era to the talking era. So that didn't work so much for me, but I did like her performance anyway. The film starts off quite slow, gets more intense and compelling in the second half, culminating in a very Hitchcock style chase across a famous landmark, this time the British Museum. The characters are a bit on the annoying side apart from that lead, and the story isn't all that gripping apart from maybe the second half. But there are some great visuals, and it's worth seeing how much Hitch makes the transition to sound pictures. At number 26 is one that I think a lot of people would maybe rank a little bit higher. Still think it's a great film though. This is Notorious from 1946, starring Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant. Ingrid Bergman is the daughter of a convicted German war criminal who's brought in to spy on behalf of the US government, but Cary Grant's character is less convinced of her loyalties. Cary Grant and Bergman both really smoulder in this film, and it's not quite up there with the best perhaps, but it's still definitely worth a watch. I keep saying that, don't I? The chemistry between Grant and Bergman works really well, and the story's gripping from beginning to end. Hitchcock demonstrates his use of pure cinema in conveying the twists and turns through visual clues for the viewer. So yeah, I do think that's one that is kind of, I put sort of mid-level, but maybe might reach a bit higher. Certainly visually, it's a great, really interesting film. And we're into the top 25. And at 25, we have Marnie from 1964. In Marnie, a femme fatale who moves from workplace to workplace stealing money from the vaults is stalked by a dashing man played by Sean Connery, who forces her to marry him in exchange for keeping her compulsive theft a secret. Haunted by her rough childhood and unloving mother, she's deeply disturbed, having anxiety attacks whenever she sees the colour red or when anyone tries to touch her. So yeah, this is one with Tippi Hedren and Sean Connery. I feel like it's Tippi Hedren's best performance actually in a Hitchcock film. She's great in The Birds, and I prefer her character in that. But in Marnie really puts her through her acting chops. I think the only thing that puts me off this one slightly is Sean Connery is so unlikable in this. He's so horrible to her all the way throughout. Really abusive, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I don't always have to like the main characters in a film. I mean, you know, you've got films like Taxi Driver, haven't you, which are brilliant, but you wouldn't want to root for Travis Bickle, would you? But yeah, Sean Connery's character in this is really abusive to her, uses her PTSD against her as a ploy, forces her to marry him. It's just unpleasant to see her go through that kind of treatment, really, so that puts me off. However, it's a really well-made film. I love Hitchcock's use of colour as a theme, and the way he uses colour to represent trauma is really interesting. Some really interesting ideas in Marnie, but and yeah, I do find it really harrowing throughout. So if it's, you know, for a film that you want to watch that's gonna disturb you, I think Marnie's up there. But I just find it quite an unpleasant watch because of Sean Connery's character. I think that's why it's a bit lower than maybe other people would put it on their list. Okay, number 24, we have the original The Man Who Knew Too Much from 1934. This is the only film that I know of that Hitch made twice, apart from Murder and Mary, but that doesn't really count. That was made at the same time. These were made 20 years apart from each other. This is about a married couple and their teenage daughter who are on holiday. When their friend is shot whilst dancing, he tells the husband of an assassination about to take place in London. Fearing that their plot will be revealed, the assassins kidnap the daughter to keep them quiet. It's very suspenseful and tense, this one. It's I think it's the first black and white Hitchcock, apart from, you know, Psycho, that I watched. And it was so gripping and suspenseful that it made me want to watch more of his older works. And the main driving point of that is Peter Lorre's performance. He's the best thing about this film, I would say. I've heard people say, and I kind of agree, that everything about the remake is done better apart from the villain of Peter Lorre, who is just so grimy and he's so sinister and horrible, and kind of I can definitely tell that Hitchcock had watched his great masterpiece performance in Fritz Lang's M, where he plays a really nasty character in that, and he does it again here so well. It's very suspenseful, very gripping, and I do enjoy this one. I think it only falls down when you compare it maybe with the remake, but on its own merits, it's a great black and white Hitchcock suspense. At number 23, we have Suspicion from 1941, which has Cary Grant and Joan Fontaine in this one. It's about a shy woman who meets and marries a charming gambler, but the more she gets to know him, the more danger she realises she's in. It's, again, as I was saying before, it's a great play on our expectations of Cary Grant as the charming good guy, because... And it kind of has this enthralling and suspenseful, creeping, evolving terror throughout, kind of like Shadow of a Doubt, where you start off liking this guy and over time you start to think, she's in danger, something's not right here. And that's quite an interesting way of keeping you hooked to the screen, which you certainly do throughout this. You really feel for Joan Fontaine. She's very good at playing a victim, like she does in Rebecca, someone that you really feel bad for. And Cary Grant is particularly, he does really well here in playing quite a different character. Number 22, we have Stage Fright from 1950. This is one of a few of Hitchcock films that I would definitely say is an underrated one. You don't hear many people talk about it, but you really should, because it's a cracking film. It's about a struggling actress who tries to help a friend prove his innocence after he's accused of murdering the husband of a high society entertainer. This is one I've only really recently seen for the first time, so again it might have a bit of recency bias, is that the word? Bias from having been watched recently. But yeah, I do think it's really underrated and not talked about a lot. There's an interesting twist on the wrong man theme here. I'm not going to give away the plot, but you think it's the wrong man. I'll let you finish that off. Both female actors in this are superb. You've got Marlene Dietrich, who's wonderfully over-the-top diva in this, but you've also got Jane Wyman, who's quite modern in her acting approach, quite sympathetic. You definitely root for her. And Stage Fright looks and feels like a real classic Hitchcock, and one that I think a lot of people should reappraise and relook at, because it's a great film. At number 21, we have another in a list of wrong men. We have The Wrong Man from 1956, about a man who's mistakenly thought to be a bank robber because he looks just like him and has to prove his innocence in court. This one has the wonderful Peter Fonda. Again, more from the new school of acting, but does a much better job, I feel, than Montgomery Clift here in portraying that kind of modern way of acting whilst retaining the interest for the viewer. It's the only one that's based on a true story that I know of, apart from maybe Rope is kind of loosely based on a true story, and Psycho, of course, has little elements of the story of Ed Gein. But yeah, this one, interestingly enough, has Hitchcock coming out on stage at the beginning to tell you that it's based on a real story, which does that count as a cameo? I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it's interesting to see he doesn't do that in any other film, come out and introduce it. I don't know, is this the same sort of time that the Alfred Hitchcock Presents was on telly, where he used to come out and introduce it at the beginning? Maybe that's got something to do with it. But yeah, there's less big scenes here in The Wrong Man, but it is very watchable, and you do really root for Peter Fonda's character, who has a very different approach here to, say, the charm of Cary Grant. He's just much more of an everyman in this, and yeah, very intriguing to watch. At number 20, we have Saboteur, not to be confused with Sabotage. This is Saboteur from 1942, and talking of North by Northwest and Cary Grant, this is very much the same plot almost. It's about a factory worker who has to go on the run after he's wrongfully suspected of causing a fire which kills his best friend in an act of sabotage. Now, that doesn't sound the same as North by Northwest, but it is pretty much the same in execution, apart from, I'd say this feels more like a TV movie and much less lavish and big and, you know, grand as North by Northwest. And also the main character played by Robert Cummings. He doesn't have the screen presence or the likability of Cary Grant, so it's not comparable in that regard. But it does have quite a tense plot throughout, and you are quite hooked to the goings on. It's quite an enthralling cat and mouse tale, really, with some gruesome, memorable death at the beginning as well that sticks with you. There's some sinister villains in this one as well, and the ending has one of Hitch's favourite tropes, which is a chase across a national monument. In this case, it's the Statue of Liberty, one of the best. At number 19, we have Hitch's favourite film that he made himself. This is Shadow of a Doubt from 1943. Interesting plot, this one. It's about a teenage girl overjoyed when her uncle comes to visit the family in their quiet Californian town, but then slowly begins to suspect that he's the Merry Widow murderer. Joseph Cotton is back in this one in possibly his best role as the very sinister Uncle Charlie. It's a very creepy, evolving terror throughout, and we really feel for Charlie's niece in this. We really feel her frustration at not being believed by anybody, because we along with her are the only ones that know that as it goes along, we start to realise, as she does, that this guy isn't as friendly as she thought he was, and we start to realise the danger she's in. Great film, definitely worth watching. That's Hitchcock's personal favourite, Shadow of a Doubt. At number 18, not to be confused with Saboteur, we have Sabotage from 1938. This is another one of maybe 3 films that I feel is very, very underrated in Hitch's filmography. It's about a woman who discovers that her husband is a terrorist agent. Bit of a strange relationship, that, but very, very intriguing, seeing how she slowly discovers that he's a terrorist through an undercover cop that she becomes friends with, who's like a greengrocer next door, I think. There's a very famous scene in this that Hitchcock actually said if he made the film he would remake or take out completely. Her child has hold of a package which we know as an audience has a bomb in it, and he takes it across town in this parcel on a bus, and we know that it's going to go off at a particular time, and we see the clock and we hear the clock getting louder and louder as it gets closer and closer to the bomb going off. It's really, I know Hitchcock is said to be the master of suspense, but there's not that many of his films that have my heart kind of pounding out my chest, but that scene really does. But I think Hitchcock was saying that he didn't like the fact that it goes off and kills the child in the end, and he said that's kind of the agreement you kind of have with the viewer is that the suspense will be broken. That the bomb won't go off, it'll almost go off and then not go off, or something like that. You'll see that in loads of films, where it's the countdown stops just on number 1 or something like that. But yeah, he said it kind of ruined it because it did go off, so you don't have that sense of relief to go with the suspense. So he said he would do that again, and that kind of haunted him throughout his career. But yeah, the rest of the film is also really memorable. I loved the main actress, Sylvia Sidney, in this. She has these great big doleful eyes, and a sort of Betty Boop face. And you can really imagine her in a silent film. But don't get me wrong, she does a great job in this talkie as well. But she has that great Betty Boop face with the big eyes and everything, and you can't help but sympathise and root for her. In Sabotage, definitely an underrated Hitchcock film. At number 17 is one of his most famous early films from 1938, The Lady Vanishes. It's about a young woman who befriends an elderly lady but is confused when she awakes from an accident to discover the rest of the passengers deny the lady ever existed. It's one of a few Hitchcock films that I think would make a great Agatha Christie plot. There's occasionally, there are some of his films that kind of have almost like a crossover with Agatha Christie. I'd love to have seen him do an Agatha Christie adaptation. But yeah, I love the idea, really intriguing idea that the entire train gaslight her and say that, you know, her friend never existed. It's a really weird idea. Like, why are they doing this? Why was she real as the person hallucinated her? And if not, why are the whole train trying to convince her otherwise? So yeah, it's a very interesting plot, this one. And if you're feeling like that sounds familiar, it's because it was kind of repurposed, that plot, in Jodie Foster film Flight Plan in the mid-90s, I think, where she is on one of those Airbuses, you know, the ones with the double-decker airplanes. And her daughter goes missing, and then everyone she asks tries to tell her that her daughter was never there, she was on her own, etc. So yeah, really intriguing mystery idea, that, I think. So yeah, that is The Lady Vanishes. It's definitely one of the most notable of Hitchcock's 1930s films, and combines that balance of mystery and sort of quintessentially Old English wit as well in the dialogue. So yeah, that's The Lady Vanishes at number 17. Number 16, we have Spellbound from 1945, which follows a psychoanalyst who falls in love with the new head of a mental institution where she works, only to find out that he's an imposter suffering from amnesia and potentially a murderer of the man he's pretending to be. Yeah, I mean, this is great. It's got Gregory Peck again, playing against character in a fascinating way, as he did in the Paradine Case, and also Ingrid Bergman playing an interesting character as well. It perhaps relies a little bit too heavy on the sort of psychoanalytic thoughts of the time that were popular at the time. So it might have, if you are a psychology person, you might find it a little bit dated with today's modern psychotherapy. But yeah, it's an interesting idea to kind of take it from that influence. The beginning I found quite annoying, the way they all talk to Ingrid Bergman's character. She plays a very intelligent doctor, and everybody seems to have this idea of, oh, you just need a good man, you know, get your head out of those books and find yourself a proper man, all this kind of thing. It's quite patronising, I think, especially when viewed through a modern lens. But yeah, I found that quite annoying and off-putting at the beginning. But I think once Gregory Peck comes into the frame, I think it becomes a bit more interesting as she learns more about him and the mystery. There's also a wonderful Salvador Dali dream sequence, which is, along with the one in Vertigo, I'd say is the best dream sequence, sort of surreal dream sequence in any film. So that was really interesting to watch as well. And yeah, there are enough twists and turns, I think, in Spellbound to keep you hooked throughout. At number 15, we have To Catch a Thief from 1955, which is about Cary Grant again, who plays a retired cat thief who is put in charge of finding a new cat thief that's on the scene, and to prove that it's not him, essentially, that's out of retirement by finding this new one. This, along with the remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much, is a real travelogue. Beautiful scenery in this one from the south of France. And yeah, I mean, you can't get two more beautiful people than Cary Grant and Grace Kelly that are in this as well. So it's a gorgeous film to look at. And a great kind of Sunday afternoon epic mystery, crime mystery thriller. Really well done. There's so much great chemistry between Grant and Grace Kelly as well, and some really nice, well thought out camera shots as well. Yeah, this is one I hadn't seen for a while until I rewatched it recently, and yeah, what a great film it is. Good companion piece, I think, to North by Northwest if you want to see a good charming Cary Grant film. At number 14, we have Dial M for Murder from 1954. It's about a London playboy who plots the perfect murder of his unfaithful wife. This was originally, I think it came out in 3D at the cinema, which I can't really imagine. I mean, it's not like The Creature from the Black Lagoon or something like that. You can't imagine it having like loads of 3D shocks and things like that. But yeah, maybe it is quite immersive in some ways. There are some great sort of depth of field shots. Again, Grace Kelly is brilliant in this. And we don't know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, so it's very intriguing throughout. It's set as a bit of a bottle story set in one apartment, and I saw it recently actually. It's I went to like a Hitchcock festival where they showed 3 loosely connected films because they were all set in an apartment. So you had I think it was Rear Window, Dial M for Murder, and another one that escapes me, Rope. Yeah. So yeah, it all takes place in one setting, which is really nice, and it does make it quite claustrophobic and suspenseful, and you really do get immersed in Grace Kelly's fear here. There's also a genuinely shocking scene of a murder. I won't tell you who it is or how it happens, but someone falls backwards onto their knife, which is pretty gruesome for 1954, and it's quite visceral, that bit, but very memorable. So that is at number 14, Dial M for Murder. At number 13, we have another one, I would say, or the last one I would say is an absolutely underrated Hitchcock film that everyone should see. It is Lifeboat from 1944. In this one, several survivors of a torpedoed merchant ship in World War II find themselves in the same lifeboat with one of the crew members of the U-boat that put them there and have to collectively decide what to do about it. This is another bottle movie, as they call it, because it's all kind of takes place in one environment on the lifeboat, and it's really fascinating how Hitchcock manages to keep you gripped throughout in just one location. The characters keep on washing up ashore, not ashore, sorry, onto that. They keep saving new people. So there are people sort of like added to it, and you really do care about the characters in it as well. They all come at it from a very interesting angle. And there's also a great diva performance from Tallulah Bankhead, who would give Marlene Dietrich a run for her money. She's brilliant in this. Apparently she was quite difficult to work with in real life, and I can totally understand that from the performance she gives. But yeah, it's a great film. It also has a great Hitchcock cameo that's worth checking out in there as well. But yeah, it's really interesting how it progresses and how they all have different ideas about how to deal with this enemy who is actually quite useful to them in some ways. Yeah, and it's just impressive to see how Hitchcock keeps you hooked throughout, and the special effects that he employed in the camera angles and things like that he used to keep it fresh and exciting. So yeah, I'd definitely say that's an underrated Hitchcock film, and one that you need to track down if you've not seen it yourself. At number 12, we have one that I'm sure will score a lot higher on many Hitchcock fans' ratings. It is The Birds from 1963. It's about Melanie, a young socialite from San Francisco who follows a handsome bachelor to his holiday house to play a prank on him. However, the town she is visiting is experiencing a strange phenomenon. The birds are attacking the locals. The Birds is probably Hitchcock's most straightforward horror film with a supernatural when nature attacks plot. This would of course be hugely influential on other disaster blockbusters like Jaws, but does give it rather a B-movie feel at times. There's a few elements that bolster it higher than this, however. There's a great chemistry between the main players and some inventive use of sound and visual effects. What the film lacks in overarching story, it counters with some decent character development, which may disappoint viewers who are just there for like a shock fest. It's enjoyable though, and has some really tremendous, memorable moments. But in comparison to other classic Hitchcock films, The Birds is fairly one-dimensional for me, without the satisfactory explanation or payoff needed to make it believable. It's still a great film though, and at number 12, you can see that I do think quite highly of it. Number 11, just missing out on the top 10, we have from 1935, The 39 Steps. A man in London tries to help a counter-espionage agent, but when the agent is killed and the man stands accused, he must go on the run to save himself. This is a great suspenseful spy movie where a normal man gets mixed up in a plan to steal British military secrets. It's a classic story with a perfect execution. The 39 Steps is just a really good rewatchable film. I can't say much more about it than that, but yeah, it's classic Hitchcock and you definitely need to see it. And we're into the top 10. I've actually recorded this video twice, would you believe? I spent over an hour recording this only to discover that the sound wasn't working. So I really hope the sound is working this time. So at number 10, we have The Lodger from 1927, my favourite of his silent movies. It's about a serial killer who prowls the London fog, murdering blonde women. It's not long until the residents of a shared house start to suspect a handsome new lodger might not be all that he seems. So the influence of the German Expressionists is really evident here in one of Hitchcock's earliest films, with its excellent use of shadowy scenes and suspenseful twists and turns. There's some brilliant shots in this. There's one on a staircase that really stays in my mind, and also when he first arrives in the London fog and you just see Ivor Novello's eyes over his scarf. It's really quite creepy. I also love there's a shot where they are talking about the steps that are coming from above, and they angle the camera up and it's like an invisible floor, like a glass floor that he's walking over. Really clever use of silent film to portray sound. I thought that was really, really fascinating. But yeah, The Lodger, if you watch any silent film of Hitchcock's, you need to watch that one. Great film. Ivor Novello is totally mesmerizing in it, and the sort of shadowy shots and everything that Hitchcock uses in it are just so memorable. At number 9, we have from 1948, Rope. It's about two students who set about to not only commit the perfect murder, but to host a dinner party around the corpse hidden in plain sight. This one is based loosely on the real life case of Leopold and Loeb, two university students who tried to commit the perfect murder, as they called it, and saw that they were kind of above good and evil, as Nietzsche would say. I did really like this one. The characters are particularly not likable at all. You really don't like them. I don't think you're supposed to, but I think a lot of the joy from Rope is in the execution of how it's, if you pardon the pun, is in the way that they make the film. It's all done supposedly in one take. There are a couple of edits here and there, but it's very cleverly done, so it looks like one long take. It's all done in one place, so another bottle store. It's all done in one apartment, and you can see the lighting outside, the city lights, and the sky go gradually darker, a little bit like watching this. Yeah, it's really interesting to see how he does that, and also how he keeps up the suspense as well, because we know that the body is in that chest that they're all walking around in the party. That's another thing that Hitchcock does really well in quite a few of his films, is this idea of a jolly party with a disturbing thing happening underneath. He does that in loads of films. What's the Saboteur? He does it in. He does it in the remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much. Yeah, there's lots. North by Northwest, of course, where there's this kind of party where nobody really realizes that it's being hosted by the villains. Yeah, great stuff. So that is at number 9, Rope from 1948. At number 8, we have Strangers on a Train from 1951. This one, again, I think would make a very intriguing Agatha Christie novel if there had been a crossover between them. It's about two strangers who meet on a train, obviously, and get into a discussion about how the perfect murder would be if they swapped murders. So if two strangers were to decide, right, I'll murder yours and you murder mine, and then nobody will wouldn't be able to pin it on us, kind of thing. Really interesting. However, one of them is taking it a bit more seriously than the other one, and whilst one of them thinks that it's just, just a philosophical discussion, the other one actually goes ahead and murders the other person's murder victim, and then starts stalking him to do the same for him, in return. Really creepy stuff, this one. Loved Strangers on the Train. I've not seen it that many times, but yeah, it's become one of my favourites. Hitchcock's often called the master of suspense, and it's films like this, I think, that really solidify that, that reputation. It's really gripping, it's really suspenseful, even unpleasantly so at times, with excellent acting across the board. Robert Walker is probably the second most creepy villain in any Hitchcock film, as Bruno. I'll tell you further on who I feel is the creepiest villain, but he's definitely up there. He's very creepy. There's a couple of great shots that stick with you long after you've finished the film. One where they're at a tennis match and they're watching from opposing sides, and you can see, as he looks across into the other crowd, you can see all the other crowd sort of, they're watching the ball go back and forth. But Bruno is just dead-eyeing him straight in the face, and it's so creepy. That bit really sticks with you. There's another bit as well where you see like quite a gruesome murder, but you see it in the reflection of the glasses of the victim that have fallen on the floor. That's really clever stuff as well. So yeah, I definitely watch Strangers on the Train. That's one of the best of his sort of mid-period films, one I'd highly recommend. At 7, we have Frenzy from 1972, one of his last films. I think it's his penultimate film. It's about a serial killer again, on the rampage in London, strangling people with his necktie. Hitchcock returns to the UK for this, his first British film for years, to direct his penultimate film, Frenzy. As well as return to his home country, this is a return to form for the Master of Suspense, and probably my favourite of his later works. It's surprisingly gritty, violent and disturbing, but recognisable as a Hitchcock for the dark humour that permeates the script. Another recurring theme is the way that Hitch creates a terror out of the most banal and everyday. There are memorable set pieces that you'd expect from a Hitchcock film. The most memorable for me is the contrast of two murder scenes. Now, this is really interesting because what he does is, earlier on in the film, you see a really gruesome murder from the necktie, with a necktie. And you know that it's taking place in the serial killer's apartment. But then later on in the film, they repeat the beginning of this. So he walks in with his murder victim into the flat. But then the camera kind of takes us out of the room, down the stairs and out into a busy road. So you know that it's happening in there, but you also know that nobody walking past realizes that. And it really makes you think about, the evil that can take place behind closed doors, that we could be 10 feet away from the most horrific acts and just not know it. And that really makes you think. It's not a pleasant thought either. But yeah, I think it really works. You almost want to scream at the film, like, about what's going on. You get in there and make it stop. And so I think that's really interesting use of his themes of suspense and horror really work well there. And yeah, another thing that really worked for me is the way that he twists our expectations of the killer. The main character and murderer in this is very charming, again, like the sort of Cary Grant character, very, very charming, very charismatic. And this is something I think that Hitchcock does really well, in both this film and films like Psycho as well. Before his films, a lot of killers were monsters, were sort of universal monsters, your Draculas and your Wolfman and things like that. And he really made you realise the evil that's all around us, the kind of that we don't even realise, much more of a realistic depiction of evil. When you think about like real life murder cases where they talk to neighbours and things, and they always say, "Oh, he was such a normal looking guy," we still expect our killers to be to look like Frankenstein's monster. Do you know what I mean? And one of the most scary things is that killers look normal and are actually very good at masking and very good at convincing people that they're not dangerous, and that's what makes them so dangerous. And in films like Frenzy and in Psycho, Hitchcock does that so well. He shows a charismatic, sympathetic character that has this evil within them. And he does that really, really well. So yeah, Frenzy, I think, is probably his last great film, and definitely one that I would recommend. At number 6, we have The Man Who Knew Too Much, the remake from 1956. It's about an American doctor and his wife, a former singing star, witnessing a murder whilst vacationing in Morocco, who are drawn into a twisted plot of international intrigue when their young son is kidnapped. I think this is the only one that Hitchcock remade. He did think about remaking The Lodger, which would have been quite interesting to see that in colour and with sound. But I think this is the only one that he released twice as a remake. A lot of people have said, and I kind of agree with them, that everything about the remake, apart from the main villain of Peter Law, is improved on from the original. I really love Jimmy Stewart in this as the very protective husband, and also Doris Day gives a really underrated performance in this. I always thought that, like many people, that she was quite a twee actress, from Pillow Talk and Calamity Jane and things like that, but she does a really, really emotional adult performance in this as the distraught mother, and I can see why Hitch picked her as well, because there's a really interesting use of music in this. The way that she uses the song Que Sera Sera, which comes from this film, originally came from this film, very famous song. But it's used in a really intriguing and interesting way towards the end of the film to kind of distract the kidnappers. I won't tell you the full plot, but yeah, you definitely need to check out the remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much. It's also a glorious looking film as well, real travelogue of a film, and a great Sunday afternoon mystery suspense thriller. And we're into the top 5 now, and I would say that any of these films could be swapped to be the number 1. I really believe that. Like, I'm sure you've guessed which films these are now. There's no massive surprises, I don't think. And I'm sure any of these would rank pretty highly on most Hitchcock fans' lists for very good reason. But I had to put them in some sort of order, so I'm sure these will change. But at number 5, we have, from 1959, North by Northwest. A New York City advertising executive goes on the run after being mistaken for a government agent by a group of foreign spies. This is a great example of Hitchcock's perfect combination of suspense, dark humour and great quirky characters. It's the best Bond film that never was, I always think of this one. Carrie just oozes charisma and charm throughout. It's witty, it's action-packed, it's epic. I don't know what else to say about North by Northwest, but it's my favourite. It's one of my favourite action films ever, and just works so well with Cary Grant as the lead. Very, very witty, great dialogue, fantastic cinematography. If you haven't checked it out already, you definitely need to check out North by Northwest. At number 4, we have my wife's favourite, quite understandably. It's from 1940, and it's Rebecca. It's about a self-conscious woman who juggles adjusting to her new role as an aristocrat's wife and avoiding being intimidated by his first wife's spectral presence. The third of the Daphne du Maurier adaptations, this one, not in that order, I think it's actually the first of them, along with Jamaica Inn was first, that was 1939, then this one in 1940, and then The Birds in 1953 or whatever it was. But yeah, this is definitely the best one. It's got so much atmosphere, this kind of gothic atmosphere. It's so dense and emotional. It really draws you in, suckers you in, this film. It really does. You really feel for Joan Fontaine as the main character. She's so it's such an abusive, horrible relationships she goes through with the main character, Laurence Olivier, and also, I was going to say it before, the most sinister character in any Hitchcock film, as far as I'm concerned, Mrs. Danvers. I can't remember who the actress is, but she's superb in this role. She's so sinister. She's got that great kind of, what do you call it? It's like serpentine, snake-like quality of being very coercive, and she does there's this great horrible scene where she's kind of whispering to Joan Fontaine's character to throw herself out the window. The reason I keep saying Joan Fontaine's character is she doesn't have a name. She's so abused by everybody. Her name doesn't even get mentioned. She's so in the shadow of this, the spectral shadow of Rebecca, the wife who's died, and she is seen to have been replaced by the house staff, by Mrs. Danvers, etc., who just treat her absolutely abysmally. Yeah, it's one of the best stories, probably the best story that Hitchcock ever adapted, with the most fleshed out characters and some really memorable scenes and characters in it as well. Great gothic atmosphere. You have to check out Rebecca. It's even if you're not into like black and white films or whatever, I assure you you need to see Rebecca. It's a beautiful, harrowing, wonderful film. And now we're into the top three, and at number 3 is one that I think would be the top of most Hitchcock fans' lists, so I apologise now. Like I say, any of these three could replace each other as number 1. But it's from 1960, it's black and white, it's very iconic, probably his most iconic film ever. Have you worked out what it is yet? It is Psycho. A woman runs away after stealing money from her company. She has to stop halfway on her journey in a heavy rainpour and stumbles across the strange Norman Bates and his overbearing mother. It may just be the last stop she ever takes. Now, Psycho is a fascinating movie for many, many reasons. Believe it or not, when he made Psycho, Hitchcock was going through quite a rough time. The last couple of films he'd made had been relative flops for him, and as such, the studio didn't want to give him a lot of money to make Psycho. So Psycho is actually made on a bit of a shoestring. It's made on like a TV budget, essentially, and this is one of the reasons why it's black and white. It was originally going to be made in colour, which I just can't imagine Psycho being in colour. It just wouldn't work as well, I don't think. But Psycho was to be his most iconic film, even this late in his career, when you think about it. He'd already been going about 40 years at this point. And it actually changed cinema. It changed the way we watch films, believe it or not. No other film really, I don't think, can boast that claim, but this one really can. Hitchcock had the proviso, because of all the different twists, turns and shocks of the film, that the viewing audience had to go in at the beginning. They couldn't go in the middle of the film. Up until this time, a lot of people would go to the cinema as a bit of a day trip, and they would go in the middle of a film, watch till the end of that film, watch the next one like a matinee or whatever, watch a few films in a row. And it didn't really matter where they came into the film. They'd just sort of pick up the plot as they went along. And Hitchcock said no to that. He said, you can't do that. You have to, all the audiences have to come in at the beginning, because although I don't want them to see the shocks too early in the film. Yeah, I can't really imagine a director having that kind of power now, but even though he was in quite a rough way when he made Psycho, he still had that amount of power to say to cinemas, you know, you can't let people in after it started. And that's kind of how we watch cinema now as a result of that. So that's really interesting. It also has quite a lot of other firsts as well. It has the first flushing toilet in a film. And the way that the very famous murder happened, murdering the main character halfway through the film, this was just unheard of. I can't think of any film that happened to, because you always root for the main character and think they're obviously going to make it through to the end, and she doesn't. You know, spoiler alert. I'm sure you know this twist already, but she doesn't make it to the end of the film, and is brutally murdered in the shower scene halfway through the film. It's also really, talking of the shower scene, it's also Really interesting the way music is used in this. Bernard Herrmann had worked with Hitchcock on a few films by this point, and he uses music in a really, and silence actually, in a really interesting way. You hear those iconic stabs of the violins that echo the stabbing, the violent stabbing that happens in the middle in the shower scene. But then straight away you get this eerie silence, this kind of deafening silence, as as we kind of we pull away from the dead of Janet Leigh's dead character, and she did an amazing job. She's so good in this, of keeping her eye trained on the camera, just completely open like a dead eye, which then fades into like a circling plug of water. Oh, it's great stuff. It's still great stuff now. It's still shocking and powerful, even so many years later. Anthony Perkins as well is also superb in this. I don't think he'd been like a serious actor before this. He'd mostly been like a teen heartthrob, like a Bobby Sox sort of performer. And he really brings an interesting take on the character as well. Like I was saying before, he's not like what you'd expect a monster to be. He's very charming, very sympathetic. And you kind of root for him almost a lot of the time, even though you know he's a murderer and very deranged character. He plays it in such a way that you almost sympathise with him, and that's not easy to do, especially for someone who wasn't used to acting. He does a superb job, and definitely a career highlight for him as a result. So that's Psycho. It breaks so many rules. It's understandably the most iconic of Hitchcock's films. And it's one that, even if you're not a fan of Hitchcock, every movie lover needs to see Psycho at least once in their life. And just two remain, and I really struggled with where to put these. I know I'm going to pull my own hair out when I watch this back, because this could easily be my number one, and on some days it definitely would be. But at number 2 is going to be, from 1954, Rear Window. A professional photographer is stuck, bored and frustrated in his apartment after injuring himself during an assignment. Holed up in a plaster cast, he starts to become obsessed with the lives of his neighbours, culminating in the potential witness of a murder. Hitchcock creates a masterful combination of character piece and suspense in one of his most memorable films. Each of the players is excellent, from the obsessive main character played by James Stewart to the seductive yet sympathetic performance of Grace Kelly, and the hilariously worldly wise nurse as played by Thelma Ritter. The script manages to be both funny and thought-provoking, taking on philosophically compelling themes such as obsession, voyeurism and neighbourhood morality. The set, which was so big that they had to remove the studio floor and build downwards, is so evocative. You feel utterly immersed in the clammy heat of the summer nighttime of the big city. As well as the overall feeling the film gives you are some wonderfully memorable shots, from the sensual dreamlike introduction of Kelly's character to the terrifying switch between the watcher becoming the watched. Rear Window is the perfect Hitchcock movie for anyone who enjoys the cosy crime of a murder mystery with wonderful characters and memorable production. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end. I hope you've enjoyed this ranking and it's not frustrated you too much. I'd love to hear in the comments below which is your favourite Hitchcock film and why. But for my number one, it had to be, from 1958, Vertigo. A former San Francisco police detective juggles wrestling with his personal demons and becomes obsessed with the hauntingly beautiful woman he has been hired to trail, who may be deeply disturbed. Vertigo is such a unique Hitchcock masterpiece and really hard to describe. It's not only is the story spellbinding and unsettling, but the cinematography is like a love letter to colour. I love his use of colour here, which is kind of more over the top than you would have nowadays, but is used as like an extra character. Interestingly enough, when I first saw Vertigo, I didn't really know what to make of it. I thought it was okay, but I didn't think it was anything special. But this is a film that really infects you. It really gets inside of your mind and really changes you. It's weird. It's hard to describe, like I say, but it's infectious. It's a very trippy film. And it plays again on the character of the everyman Jimmy Stewart and twists that. He has that kind of 1950s, almost like Tom Hanks, nice guy persona, but becomes more and more obsessed throughout the film and more deranged. And it's fascinating to see how he plays that. Jimmy Stewart, his acting chops really changed after he was in World War II, and you can see a decided difference in the roles that he played before World War II and after World War II. The pathos that he brings to characters like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life and his character here in Vertigo. He's able to play so many facets and different angles to a character, and he changes so much in Vertigo, and we almost feel like we're being drawn down with him. But yeah, as a piece of work, I do think that Vertigo is rightfully seen as one of the greatest films that's ever been created. Alfred Hitchcock uses all of his strengths as a visual storyteller, as a weaver of suspense, mystery, and psychology to create one of the most indelible films and unforgettable films in his collection. And that's it. That is my ranking of the Hitchcock films, all 53 of them. I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I have. I'm going to go and have a lie down in a dark room for a few hours now, I think, after that. But yeah, like I said before, do let me know in the comments below, what is your favourite Hitchcock film? What you think of these rankings, whether good or bad, and if you'd like more of these kind of videos, I would like to rank some other directors in the future, so let me know which are your favourite directors that you'd like to see me cover in the future. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Check out some more of my movie reviews on my channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like if you'd like to. Share if you'd like to. And I'll see you again on the next one. All right, take care.